We are doing a specialty crime scene presentation today from the investigators team number 3. Today we're going to discuss with you a shooting crime scene, and where we're going to start by explaining the uniqueness of a shooting crime scene. A shooting crime scene may have challenges posed on the investigators, special equipment, training, and investigators protocol. Also, there's processing techniques commonly used on shooting crime scenes. We'd also like to point out, does this type of crime scene require special evidence collection or packaging techniques? And last but not least, the safety concerns that we endure on shooting crime scenes that are required. First off, we'd like to express what makes crime scenes unique from the shooting crime scene, unique from other crime scenes. And first, we would like to add that there's 3 typical crime scenes. There's a vehicle, there's an indoor, and last there's an outdoor. A vehicle crime scene may be something to the nature of a drive-by, or someone may have been shot inside a vehicle and they have to analyze the vehicle from the inside or out. There's also the indoor crime scene, where you have the crime scene where it's inside an area or a building or a residence that's covered or inside. Last but not least, there's, like I said, the outdoor crime scene. And this can contain any type of yard or some open space or place that's outdoors. Secondly, we would like to address the types of challenges that are posed on crime scene investigators. I would like to point out the 2 main challenges that I have mainly concern with. The first challenge is that investigators may be the last to appear on the shooting crime scene, so the evidence may have been tampered with unintentionally. The evidence may have been disturbed due to previous evidence collection teams, or it may just even be missing in all due to previous law enforcement or, like I said, any other crime scene evidence collection team. The last thing that I would like to address is that weather and lighting plays a big factor in challenges on crime scene investigators. The weather may be very harsh that day. It may have rained, or let's say for instance it had rained during the investigation, or it previously rained that day. It makes it very difficult to collect evidence effectively because you have the moisture and the wetness from the rain. Lighting. With the lighting, we have a document, and it was processed from a shooting crime scene, and it's a dark print fabric with gunpowder. It was photographed with regular lighting and IR. This is typical with lighting. Lighting, like I said, plays another challenge for crime scene investigators. We also have another photo that demonstrates that the points on the scale where the white in residue and the L shape one, it shows exactly where the point is, and the large scale shows the demonstration of the defects of the entire area.
Alright, summer education required for ballistic individuals is they need actually a bachelor's in forensic science, and some of that involves biology, chemistry, calculus, geometry, physics, and criminalistics. Chemistry, biology, physics, and calculus. Some of these are used to determine the projectile or the speed of the projectile and determine where it has landed, to see the angles, and to determine the range of the individual that shot the gun. Some other trainings that is needed for ballistic individuals is they have to know the ammunition, the wound ballistics, gunpowder residue, and many more, which actually helps to determine who shot the bullet again. So it's a really difficult job to do. And there's actually 3 different types of ballistics. Internal ballistics is one type of study, basically. These type of people actually are testing the range on which the bullet was shot from, and they're usually in labs. They're not actually outdoor in the fields testing these items. Another form is terminal ballistics. Terminal ballistics, they actually calculate the entry and exit points of an object, like the entry or exit wounds from a person, or entry and exit points on a wall or object. And external ballistics, these people are done by crime scene investigator, a police officer who has the training to analyze ballistics. And these people actually determine the time and the final point which the bullet has landed, probably the time when the bullet was shot from the gun to the point that stopped in a wall. And they actually determine the angles which the bullet came from, which probably would have been up on a high wall or a low piece of a car or something. They can determine which angle the bullet came from. And some tools that they actually use to determine these factors are a trajectory rod, which it's used for the angles, lasers to see better their targets, cameras, sketches, and scales to measure everything from the crime scene. And some safety concerns that at a shooting scenes, there is really not many safety concerns, because they're usually the last people that go into the scene. As Tanji had mentioned earlier, they're usually the last people to enter, and there's basically more detectives and other investigators at the scene first, which usually the first person that goes into a scene are usually the first ones to get the scene safe for everyone else.
Alright, so my group had shooting scenes, and my part was the special evidence collecting and packaging techniques of a shooting scene. It's important to always make sure you collect all evidence associated with any scene, especially a shooting scene. I just provided some pictures here just to kind of show a little bit of collecting evidence and stuff. Evidence collecting. When working with a shooting scene, you want to get all the evidence that can be used as incriminating. This is important to make sure all snapshots are taken of stray bullets, as well as fingerprinting and collecting any bullet fragments from around the scene. This will help determine maybe what kind of gun was used at the scene, and also may help in further in the case and helping lead to someone. Gunpowder collecting is also extremely important. This is something that can be tracked maybe on an individual's clothes or even their body or hands. This is why it's important when processing a scene to collect any and everything associated with a gun. It is also important to snapshot even things that may not seem so important. This will become important later, maybe when you're reconstructing the scene for the jury, and maybe you might find something that you could use to help sway the jury. Scene reconstruction. This is another important procedure in processing a shooting scene. This is where this particular picture is determining the bullet projector. It gives you kind of a better sense of where the shooter was at or where they started whenever they shot and where it finished, which in this particular picture is in that fireplace. And also, whenever reconstructing this, they could use a 3D version to show where the shooter was at whenever they fired the gun. Scene reconstruction is important to go in depth on in collecting evidence from a shooting scene because of the nature of the crime. When explaining this to a jury, you want to have all the pieces and able to reconstruct this crime scene. You want to reconstruct it to where you can, like I said earlier, sway the jury in the way that you're trying to sway them. You have to leave out anything that might be considered too graphic, or else ultimately will be tossed out. I also got a couple pictures of some evidence collecting here. On the left is the plastic bag evidence, which has looks like a piece of clothing in it. On the right is the small envelope, which is where they're collecting a hair. It's important to package everything from a shooting, although there are certain things that need to be packaged separately or in a certain container. When packaging items from a crime scene, you want to make sure that if there is any clothing that you seal off in a plastic bag. That way, you know, if there's anything on it that needs to be tested, it can be tested for residue. If you want to swab the residue or any liquid or anything, you can use, like in this picture right here, a swab, then insert it back in the tube. That way it can't be contaminated or ruined or anything like that. And then it can also be transported and reopened safely. This is an important procedure in a case like this because it can lead to a lot of different connections of the shooter. Here's some other packagings. These would be the paper that they package it in. There are many different collection methods to choose when packaging items from a scene. Anything that may or has a substance on it would need to be swabbed, or you could put it in a container like earlier, or maybe in a plastic bag, or even like on the t-shirts and stuff, you can use the fold and put them in something to protect it, plastic bag, most likely. As for a weapon, it would be best to put it probably in a bag as well. If you put it in the paper, sometimes it wouldn't be bad, but then also it can, if it has anything on it, it can also get lost in the brown paper sack. As for the rounds, you can use the small envelopes like the hair earlier, and these would be maybe efficient in that smaller space, saving maybe if there's a fingerprint or anything like that on it to use. In conclusion, evidence packaging is always important in any scene. Although when it comes to shooting scenes, it's more important to make sure all information is collected precise. Evidence must be precise in a case where there is a murder or homicide that needs to be proven. Packaging items is another key factor in the prosecution. Everything must be packaged to where it can be analyzed and the data can be recorded. This will further the findings of the case and ensure easier prosecution or conviction. And then these are all the references in which I received all my slides from. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Allen, and my part of the presentation is about the special handling of guns in the lab. The next part in the lab is about what happens after the photos are taken, after the fingerprints are done, after touch DNA and everything goes, the gun then goes to the gun lab. And the first thing we need to determine is who owns the gun. Basically, who shot the sheriff? The serial number will let investigators discover who owns a gun. I think Hogna said it best. Criminals think that grinding off the serial number will stop any investigator from discovering who owns the gun. Just because you can't see the number doesn't mean it isn't there. The number is etched into the metal crystals of the gun. Now you need a bullet to compare to the crime scene. Some retrieval systems use little rubber balls and some use a water tank. Okay. This is a twin microscope comparator. A twin microscope comparator can compare side by side the crime scene evidence to the bullet acquired in the lab. A match is when the striations from one bullet continue into the other one. The comparator can also compare shell casings. Each gun puts specific metallic or mechanical marks on each shell casing as it is ejected from the mechanism. Now that we know who owns the gun and the fingerprints, the gunshot residue and other evidence found at the scene, it tells us who perpetrated the crime. Now, here are some of the fine people who gave their knowledge to us to help us do this presentation.